has a Freedom of Information request revealed a shocking truth about the number of people coming across by small boat and the reality of their ages? Are we seeing mass deception on a huge scale over the ages of illegal migrants and genuine asylum seekers who come across to the United Kingdom? My name's Tom Harwood and this is GBN Originals. Now, a Freedom of Information request was submitted to the Home Office to reveal the age and gender breakdown of asylum seekers who were successfully granted asylum from the years 2010 to 2023. This data can produce a population pyramid. The first thing that we see in this data is that overwhelmingly those granted asylum were men. Now that might run contrary to what people might ordinarily think are the perhaps most vulnerable groups in the world. People would think that women and girls are perhaps more vulnerable to global instability than young men. Yet it's overwhelmingly young men that are being granted asylum in the United Kingdom. And there's something else that was surprising about this data, and I had a look at it produced in a helpful population pyramid bar chart. Stay with me here. This will be utterly damning for UK government policy. Watch this. A Freedom of Information request has revealed the population pyramid of those granted asylum from 2010 to 2023. Now, on the red, we can see these are females granted asylum, but look how much bigger the number of males granted asylum is. This is everything in the blue. The dark blue represents more men than women. And just look at the scale of how many more men are being granted asylum than women in our system. But I want you to draw attention particularly to this gap here. This very strange gap in what normally we might expect to be a rather smooth curve. That's sort of what most normal, unadulterated data looks like. These are the ages, of course, up the y-axis here. What is this gap all about? We see very few people aged 18, 19, 20 and 21 being granted asylum. And we see a huge unnatural spike here in people aged 16 and 17. The two largest numbers are people aged 16 and 17 being granted asylum. Why so few 18, 19, 20-year-olds, but this strange, huge spike at 16 and 17? My contention here is that this might not be really what's going on. Could it be that people aged 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 are simply saying they are aged 16 and aged 17, causing this deficit here and this spike here in order to be treated as child refugees when really they are adults? That's what this peculiarity on this distribution looks like. This strange spike just at the level before you reach adulthood. Is it really the case that that's the natural number of people coming across? Or are people telling porkies about their ages?
Us blokes hate talking about a little thinning up top, and many of us settle with that balding look, but that wasn't for me, and that's why I went to Elite Hair, the world's leading hair loss clinic, and now I've had over 4,000 new hairs added to this barnet, and very soon I'm going to be rocking some brand new flowing locks, and you can too. So how does it work? Step 1, I sent the team a set of photos of my head. Step 2, I then spoke to one of the Elite Hair staff who looked through my photo submissions and worked out a treatment plan for me. Step 3, Elite Hair then organised accommodation and the treatment. I was at their state-of-the-art treatment centre in Istanbul, and their incredibly kind staff took me through the process, and before I knew it, I was in surgery. Elite Hair and their leading medical experts have specialised in pain-free treatments using the sleep deep method, and they really mean that. I felt incredibly relaxed the whole time, and I haven't felt any pain since. Check out Elite Hair using the link in the description. When you do, Elite Hair will provide you with a free personalised hair analysis. Then you'll join over 100,000 happy patients. Hit that link and start your hair growth journey like I did today.
Well, it certainly looks a bit suspicious. Should we ask the view of the Migrant Support Coordinator, Kay Marsh? Kay, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Sorry to bombard you with figures, but I think it's very interesting to see that so few people around the age of 18, 19, 20, 21 seem to apply, but lots of 16 and 17-year-olds. Have you experienced that? People obviously lying about their age?
No, absolutely not. It's not something I see at all. I've seen people from, small children right up to elderly people. We get a very wide range of age groups coming across.
Why is it so many more men come across than women?
Again, there's lots of reasons for that. In certain areas, young men are the ones that are at the most risk of being conscripted into almost certain death. So, from some areas of the world, potentially that's why.
What do you make of Keir Starmer's speech today at the summit, talking about how global leaders from across the board need to come together to smash the gangs, and that he's very angry about this all and it needs to stop, essentially?
Well, I think the coming together of, today is a good thing. We need more collaboration across Europe if we're going to sort of deal with the situation head on, don't we? We need, countries are blaming other countries, and what we really need is people to work together. So it's overall positive so far, I would say. It's important to smash the gangs, of course, and the government seem very, very firmly on that sort of line of messaging. But we need to remember that's only part of the situation, isn't it? The criminal gangs. I think that hopefully from today, new ideas will come out about, who are the people that are coming, why are they coming, how can we manage just immigration in this country a lot better. We need to take a slightly more compassionate view. I think it's smashing the gangs very important, but it's not going to happen overnight.
I suppose one of the other elements that has been talked about consistently throughout this conversation is that smashing the gangs is one part, but the other part of this has surely got to be what happens to people when they come to the UK. It's very hard to deport someone who comes to the UK from a country that is not viewed as a safe country. I mean, that's almost guaranteed asylum for anyone who comes across from a country like Afghanistan, for instance. And yet, a safe third country to where these individuals could be deported has been taken off that policy agenda by this government.
The safe third country argument, I think, we can put that to bed for now. That people don't have to settle in the first country that they get to. We've spoken about this for a very long time. The issue comes because people need to be on British soil before they can claim asylum. And there are plenty of people coming here who do have a legitimate claim to asylum in this country, but they're being forced into small boats with a lot of people who don't necessarily have a legitimate claim. And we're having to wait until they get here to do the background checks, to find out who they are and if their claim is genuine. If we could start that claim before people needed to get here, say at a processing centre in northern France, just for as an example, we could then identify who the people are, do the background checks, do the legal checks, bring the people here safely who have a right to asylum here, and then anybody caught trying to sort of sneak in the back door, as it were, on a small boat, there would be far more legal recourse to deal with them, I believe.
OK, Kay Marsh, thank you very much indeed. You're a migrant support coordinator. Well, there you go.
Problem is, the people that come across on the small boats, often throw away their documentation.
Yeah, you don't know who they are.
Don't know exactly where they come from, certainly don't know their age. And I think that age thing is very, very significant because part of the new bill that's being brought forward to deal with this stuff that the government's bringing forward actually repeals the age checks that were brought in the last year of the previous government. And I think age checks are so important. I mean, looking at that data, there is clearly skullduggery going on.
I understand people want to be compassionate towards people who are in need. You've got to be sensible, though. There's only so many resources, and with huge levels of poverty in this country as it is, or people struggling at least, I mean, priorities.
That gap there should send shockwaves and alarm bells to anyone in power. The fact that so few people are granted asylum at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, but so many people are granted asylum at age 16 and 17, those unnatural-looking spikes in what you might ordinarily expect to be a smoother graph of distribution, why so low as soon as you get over the age of 18? Well, it looks to anyone as if this is an artificial element of data. It looks, at first checking, it looks like it doesn't pass the sniff test, like people are lying about their ages. that yes, in reality, that curve is much, much smoother, but on paper, people say they are 16 or 17 rather than revealing their true ages so that they're treated as children in the system, so that they're given greater state handouts and indeed less onerous requirements. These are some big, big questions to ask of the government, because that data, laid out as it is, does not look right. And yet, what is the government doing? It's passing a new immigration bill. It's going through the House of Commons as we speak. And whilst it's called the Border Security Bill, it's beefing up the powers of border enforcement, bringing in the intelligence services to deal with the plan to smash the gangs, as the Prime Minister repeatedly says. It also repeals a lot about previous Conservative legislation. A law was passed by the Conservatives in their last year or so in office that mandated age checking of migrants, illegal migrants who cross over in small boats and arrive on our southern border. Yet this new legislation, this new Labour legislation, repeals mandatory age checking. This seems like an absolutely shocking move to do. In a bill called Border Security, that's the title of the bill, the Border Security Bill. Why would it remove the mandatory mandate for new arrivals to confirm their age, to have medical checks to ensure that they are the age that they say they are? This isn't just about people gaming the system and getting easier access to the asylum system. This is also fundamentally about safety. One of the things that we know people who come across on small boats do is very often ditch their documents, throw away their documentation so that we don't know precisely where they come from or how old they are. We have seen in the past cases of people who are far, far older than they say they are, ending up in schools, put in classrooms. There was one egregious case of a migrant who turned out to be touching 30 years old, who was placed in a class with 16-year-olds. This is extraordinary and clearly very wrong. And authority figures are afraid to point it out when it happens. In this particular case, children in the class were saying, there is an adult man in our classroom. And figures of authority were saying, no, don't be silly. Some people develop facial hair earlier than other people. And whilst that is, of course, true, there are lots of other elements of this story that didn't pass the sniff test. That is, of course, one extreme example. But this data revealed by this FOI request does prove a different story, a wider story, that it's not just isolated examples, that this non-standard distribution of data, this non-standard age spread, that clearly reveals something strange is going on in the system. And instead of addressing it, the government is removing one of the tools necessary to understand precisely what is happening, to make sure illegal migrants and legitimate refugees alike are placed in the correct age stream for the age they actually are, rather than the age they pretend to be or wish that they were. This all comes on the same day that the Prime Minister is convening an international summit of up to 40 countries to try and deal with the small boats crisis, to try and, in his words, smash the gangs. And yet, despite international meetings and agreements to work down supply chains and try and compound boats and the elements that gangs use to facilitate this trade, well, despite all of that, the numbers crossing the channel are higher than ever for this point in the year. We have never, at this point in a year, seen as high numbers cross the channel in small boats since this started being recorded, since in the middle of the last decade this phenomenon began in earnest. Clearly, there is much more to do. Clearly, this is a difficult problem for the government to solve. But taking away one of those tools to understand who is coming across, who are these people who are coming across in small boats taking away that age-checking tool as the new bill going through Parliament does? Well, that seems like it is undoubtedly a retrograde step. What do you make of it all? Do leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And also, not just the age distribution, but the overwhelming gender split of these people who have been granted asylum. Does that strike you as slightly odd as well? Is our asylum system being abused, not by those who are seeking refuge, but simply by those who are seeking greater economic expectations? Well, my name has been Tom Harwood, and this has been GBN Originals. Do remember to stay subscribed to the channel for more original content.